everyone. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the first Barcelona Community Energy Policy event. We were very fortunate to have an event last year also related to energy policies, a speaker series, and I had one of our panelists at that event, Santi Martinez, so it's very good to have him back here tonight. So yes, I would like to warmly welcome the panelists who I'll be introducing after this introductory presentation. And just highlight that this is an event of some months and weeks of planning, and we're very excited to be getting things off and underway. So I'm going to try and limit my presentation to about 15 minutes because we're really wanting to get to the panel discussion and hearing the conversations around energy policy. So to start off, I would just highlight the agenda for the event. So we'll just be starting with an introduction. Then followed by a panel discussion, which will be moderated by Alicia, and I'll introduce her in a moment. And then we'll have a question and answer session after that, and then we'll be finishing off the event with networking out in the foyer, where we will have some food and drink. Perfect. So to start off, we're gonna play the introductory video of the community. No better way to introduce the community than playing this video. I could not do it better. So please watch. Thank you.
Are you passionate about sustainable energy, innovation, and entrepreneurship? Do you want to make an impact? While the world faces major issues due to climate change, there is a lack of collaboration. InnoEnergy, the innovation engine for sustainable energy, connects change agents working towards the energy transition in one global community. Members come from over 80 nationalities, different professions, and all ages. Several were named to Forbes' 30 Under 30 list for social entrepreneurship. These members can network on the platform, discussing news and sharing insights, or network while creating and attending events with thought leaders and companies to foster innovation and spread knowledge, and organize innovation challenge solving for startups and companies who want expert input and new ideas from community members. The community believes in the power of mentoring. And the Career Centre, where passionate talent meets industry leaders like Schneider Electric, McKinsey Insights, and Engie for jobs, thesis opportunities, and internships. The community connects potential partners, customers, and investors. We are focused on innovation and entrepreneurship in sustainable energy, trusted with support from the EU, and empowered through the members who shape all community initiatives. Be part of the energy transition. Engage in the community. community.innoenergy.com.
Perfect. So that gives a little brief introduction, because we often get the question, what is the community? And obviously it is very related to InnoEnergy, because we are a community of InnoEnergy. But we are made up of volunteers, and we have a large, most of us are students. So I'm the local community manager in Barcelona, and I'm a student as well. And we take the opportunities like this to collaborate and create events. So the vision for our community is to achieve a sustainable energy future, empowering change agents worldwide. And in our mission, we seek to foster collaboration, inspiration, career opportunities, and challenge solving. Next slide, please. To highlight quickly some of the activities that we're involved in, one of the main areas is the community events, which we are holding right now, where we look to create impactful events in the 10 locations where we're located. And we have different community programs. And we also have the platform, and I think this is very powerful because we're able to connect with one another across Europe through a social media platform. And I've personally experienced some great connections and networking through this space. Last slide, I think, quickly. Here, quickly, I just wanted to highlight some facts and figures while I have your attention. So we're based in 10 locations. We have about 2,000 members on our platform, and each year we organize about 60 or more events. And some of them are a lot bigger and more impactful, like this one. Some of them are a little bit more smaller. Perfect. Then what has started in about the last year is we have this initiative that we've started within the community, which is the Community Energy Policy Initiative. And this will be the 4th event that is taking place as part of this initiative. It started off last year with an energy policy masterclass that was hosted by InnoEnergy Brussels. In September, we had a panel discussion taking place in Lisbon last month. And also last month, we had a energy policies workshop in collaboration with InnoEnergy Brussels once again. And so this is the 4th event of this initiative, and we are working towards creating and having many more. Perfect. Now, I know we've got a very mixed audience, and we've got expert panelists in the front, so I'm not going to take very long to give you an introduction to the clean energy package. But for those who don't know anything, and for those who may, for example, for myself, maybe a year ago, not knowing nothing, I've put 2 or 3 slides together. So to give a quick introduction, the clean energy package actually consists of 8 legislative proposals, and it was presented by the European Commission on the 30th of November in 2016. And its main goals, as put forward by the Commission, is to put energy efficiency first, to make Europe the global leader in renewable energy, and to have to basically put the consumers almost at the center and have they talk about a fair deal for consumers. At the bottom there are the sort of 8 energy proposals that are put forward. But if we change to the next slide, the aspects of the package you can kind of categorize in 4 or 5 ways. They talk about the governance of the energy union, the energy efficiency proposals, the new electricity market, which contains 4 of the 8 legislative proposals are related to the market design, and then also the revised Renewable Energy Directive. So tonight, our discussions are going to be quite open, but we will see probably more. We will see more discussions related to the market design and the Renewable Energy Directive and so forth. And that's obviously on the European scale, but we'll also be looking at the local scale. Quickly to highlight the new electricity market design, just those 5 aspects about it that I would like to say is that it looks for a competitive retail market. It's looking at strengthening risk preparedness of member states. It talks about regional cooperation centers, leveling the playing fields among the different resources and technologies, and then also strengthening short-term markets. And those were mainly dealt with in 3 different legislative proposals. Then lastly, regarding the revised Renewable Energy Directive, this is often quite I've had many conversations about renewable energy and the mix in Europe, and this legislation deals directly with that. So the aim of this, the target of this legislation is to receive 20% renewable energy consumption by 2030, and there are different mechanisms and frameworks that have been put in place. I personally am not very familiar with how the legislation is structured, but reading about it, there's a lot of it also has to looking into heating and cooling, because over 50% of Europe's energy consumption is through heating and cooling, as well as measures for transportation, looking at how Europe can move towards renewable energies in transportation. And what I would like to highlight quickly, and this was from our experience in the workshop we had in Brussels, is actually the legislative process that is ongoing in the European Union between the different institutions. So, for example, with the new electricity market design, also known as also spoken about as the internal electricity market, the legislation was released with the clean energy package by the European Commission. Then that was in November 2016. Then in December, the European Council took a negotiation position, or adopted a negotiation position on this legislation. And then in February this year, the European Parliament's ETRE committee adopted its report, and basically the Parliament took its negotiating position on this legislation. So we will see in the coming months, I'm not quite sure when it will happen, the negotiations on this legislation start between the three institutions. Perfect. And lastly, just finishing with some of the buzzwords that we might, and topics that we might be covering tonight. I see that I've put fuel poverty twice, so Enrique Bartlett might be very happy to see that maybe we'll be doing double fuel poverty. And yeah, that's basically to finish off my presentation. I'll now be inviting the moderator for this panel discussion, Alicia Carrasco, to give some presentations, more 3 slides, not a whole presentation, more focused on Spain and the local policies. And yeah, would warmly like to welcome her onto the stage. She's from InnoEnergy, and I think you can also give a little introduction to yourself.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris, for the invitation and the community to invite us here today. I have to say that I'm going to speak a bit about me. So I'm working on the energy industry for over 10 years. And I have worked for Siemens, I worked for a startup of the Silicon Valley emitter, I have worked for Tesla. And what I can say is you don't know ever what's going on with the legislation, because the clean energy package is dealing with energy, but there are energy issues that have to be dealt at the competition court. Or transport is coming, it's going to, electrification of transport will have an effect on energy. So we have to look at electricity, gas, transport, they are kind of sector coupling. So all of these together will have an effect on how legislation is going to be, have to be evolving, and how the industry, the innovation, and new companies have to provide services to all this. So with that in mind, if we go to the next one, I want to say that the clean energy package will evolve into having the traditional system that we see today, the platform for the distribution company, the TSO, the Red Eléctrica, how they operate the market today, is going to be changed and challenged by having many more possibilities. You're not coming just as a distribution company, you are not only having substations, you need to be active. I'm talking Spanish or English? Spanish, sorry. So, yes. So you need to, as a distribution company, you need to be active. If you are a retailer that are providing, are sending the bill to the consumer, you also have to start thinking how, when the consumer have a battery, when the consumer have electric vehicles, when the consumer have solar, how's this going to affect? So you have the distribution part that have to adapt the network to all the distributed energy resources, but also you have the retailer business that have to change, and the market is changing because there are many more things, many more resources that are going to be put into the market. So here, with all the experts we have, I think we're going to have a very good understanding at the end of how things are going to evolve, what are the opportunities, and how the services can be looked at in the near future. So I would like, with that, to invite the speakers to sit here, and we can start with the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What we will do is give each speaker an opportunity to introduce themselves. But what I can quickly highlight, and as you can see, we have Santi Martinez, the CEO of Estabanal Energía. We have Pep Sallis, who's an independent energy consultant, and you call yourself a divulger of smart grid. Sorry, I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, but from Smart Grid Catalonia, a divulger of energy policies and of information for the public. We have Pedro Gonzalez from UNESA, Director of Regulation, and Alejandro de Roca from Magnus Commodities. So I'm going to now ask that we go to the microphones, and you can give a brief introduction to yourselves. I think we can start with Alejandro. Yeah. And sorry, I think I forgot to highlight Dr. Enrique Bartlett, Associate Professor of Public Law at ESADE. My apologies. we can start.
Good afternoon. First of all, I've been invited in the last minute because Felipe Garcia was the one invited, and I'm more than pleased to participate in this event. I'm the operational director of Magnus Commodities, a consultancy firm that assesses big industrial consumers to manage the risks on the markets in terms of buying and selling energy, gas, electricity, and I'm really interested, always interested in the new innovations and changes on the market, because the first interested in this discussion is our clients right now. As a matter of fact, we represent more than 3% of the national consumption in terms of power, and we're trying to bring our point of view on this presentation.
Thank you for inviting. I'm happy to see again most of you. Estavanell Energia is a local utility located in Granollers, not far from here, employing some of your colleagues, which is always a pleasure. We are in the small generation. We are in a distribution and in retail. And when someone says that it's 3% of the national consumption, you can imagine that it's the chicken of the golden eggs. So, and it's near me. So, and we are now in everything having to do with the aggregation and just following the path of all this evolution about regulation. And I have to say that in the audience we have Karma Jimeno. Karma, I'm one of the members of the board of GIODE. GIODE is the European Association of the Local Energy Companies, and she is our Secretary General. So, and this is not a gender joke, she's in the kitchen of everything having to do with the energy package. She's in the daily negotiations. So she will be able, I hope, to update us about the current negotiations. Everything would happen 2 weeks ago, everything which is going to happen next week, because she's involved in all these things. So.
Good evening, Enric Bartlett. First of all, thank you for inviting me. As Chris has said, I am actually a professor, public law professor at ESADE Law School, ESADE Law and Business School, Ramon Llull University. My relationship with energy is with energy regulation. I am studying that, but this is like an ocean, so I can talk about some issues in the energy regulation. One of them is fuel poverty, which is one which I've been working in the last times. And previously to my activity as a law professor since, well, right now, a good bunch of years, I've been working in the civil service, in the local administration, in the small administration, and in a small city council in Monistrol de Montserrat, and afterwards I was working for the Ombudsman Office of Catalonia, for the Síndic de Greuges, during well, many years, dealing with problems of different kind, one of them about poverty. So there's a relationship also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Pedro González. First of all, thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel session about the clean energy package. I work for UNESA. UNESA is an association that comprises 5 of the major utilities in Spain, namely Iberdrola, Endesa, Gas Natural, EDP Spain, and Viesgo. Basically, I work in all those topics related with the regulation, specifically the national one and also the European one. So one of the most exciting things that have happened in this sector in the last 2 years is obviously the clean energy package that is not finished yet. It's a pleasure, as I said before, to be here to share with you our comments.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting and for organizing this event this afternoon, the sunny afternoon in Barcelona. So it's a pleasure to be all together here. My name is Pep Sallis. I made my first solar installation in 1999, so almost 20 years ago. And since then, all my life has been around energy, mostly in technical issues until 2010. And afterwards, I moved to a digital part of smart meters and so on. And last years, more focused on, after my PhD, more focused in regulation and energy policy. So my expertise is not in one topic. I'm not expert in nothing, but I have maybe a somewhat global overview about energy from the biological point of view. So how things work in the nature and how we can learn from that. Technical issues, digital issues, and now legislation and policy. And I like a lot to divulgate issues related to energy and promote debate on that. And I'm doing that through the webpage smartgrid.cat and another, among other things that we do. We organize regular dinners, for instance, to debate in a very nice environment, topics about energy in society. So it's a pleasure to be here and to contribute to this debate. Thank you.
Okay, so to start with the questions, I will have to say that apart from the clean energy package that is now under negotiation, and Carmen she does know a lot of insight of how the negotiations are today. But there are certain things that are today happening in Spain that also are somehow influenced by the European Union, but others are very specific to Spain. One that is coming from the European Union are the network codes. So all the transmission system operators in Europe need to follow the same network codes. So for instance, Red Eléctrica in Spain or RTE, they need to follow the same network codes to exchange electricity and to know what's going on. So there is one network code that was approved last year in December, and it's called the Electricity Balancing Guideline, and it mandates that aggregation has to be harmonized in all the electricity European countries. With that in mind, we have to implement in Spain this aggregation because of the Electricity Balancing Guideline and many other things. And also recently, sometime this last week, it was published the expert report that it will be the baseline of the next climate change and energy transition law in Spain. Pep was one of the experts that was in this report. But with that in mind, with the clean energy package, with the electricity balancing guideline, and with the report for electricity law, climate change and energy transition law, this is what's happening today in Spain, having an eye of what's coming from the clean energy package. And with that in mind, I would like to ask Alejandro and the rest of the speakers about how do you think the clean energy package and all the things happening today in Spain will affect the market in Spain, because we have a market where there are only few players playing. Mm-hmm. Will all this transition coming, energy transition and laws and legislation have a change, and how do you think this happening? And
in different levels. I mean, from the let's say maybe the main players in the market, and obviously the main changes will affect the consumer in the mid-long term. But obviously in Spain, as what I have learned in the last years, so far 15 years in the energy market in Spain, is there will be important changes on the market. Big players are facing these changes with some big expectations, but reluctant to move first. So the big players in the market are not known as the leading on changes on the market. They are not leading, but they are ready to move forward. Okay, so at the end, what I'm trying to explain is everyone is expecting everyone is interested, but again, there's still to know, and because our experience, and I'm talking from the client side, the customer side, related to the legislation, which is slow. There's a lot to listen before taking any decision to move.
From your point of view, Felipe, that you are representing big utilities, how do you feel the market will, all the changes happening in the market will affect the utilities?
Well, for sure. I mean, the clean energy package and also the new energy transition law and the recent report in which PEP has been member is thought to change everything. I mean, this is going to create, as Chris has already presented in the beginning, a new environment in which the customer should be in the center of the new electricity sector. At this, well, also with the, of course, with the massive integration of renewables in the system in order to comply with the targets that we have for decarbonize the economy. And in addition to this, the rest of the sector and the infrastructures that we have right now should change in order to be adapted to the new to this new reality. So this is going to change the markets in the way they are working. This is going to change the customer's perspective. The customer should be more active instead of being passive, as is happening right now, specifically in residential. And also has changed the way in which the networks are operated. So at the end of the day, everything should be adapted to this new challenge and new reality that is going to happen in Europe and also in Spain as well, in the same sense.
Santi, since I know you are kind of have a vision on where you want to go, taking the opportunity of energy transition to your company and to your consumers, how do you see the new types of services around demand response and distributed energy resources affecting your business?
To the audience, is everybody aware about the concept flexibility? Yeah. Yes? Yes? So when there's need of flexibility, there's need of aggregator. Huh? Someone has to manage the flexibility. So there's a reason for the appraisal of this new role. Huh? And then we are, as a small utility, we are very, very close to the customers. Huh? Customers are our neighbors. So when everything is talking and saying that the customer must be in the center, we still wonder if the customer wants to be in the center, because there's no tradition of having the customer in the center. When we have meetings with the European Ombudsman about complaints and all these issues about the energy sector, the customer is far away from the energy. So there's a prerequisite, which is disseminating and explaining and engaging customers. So, because at this moment we say that so customers are not active. That's why when you receive the bill from the electricity, you throw it to the basket. An active customer level 1 is when you read the invoice. And from there, everything starts to improve. And then we have some possibilities, not tomorrow, but in the future, to engage and to make customers participate. This is concerning domestic customers. Another completely different story are the big consumers. The big consumers are asking for all these solutions to be made possible to make it available in the market. So we have the transmission companies and the distribution companies applying for flexibility. Someone has to make the role of doing it. But when we think about flexibility and the prosumer with the PV cells and the batteries and all these things, this is a target, but it's not an easy one. But then when we look at the industrial, this is really they are waiting for. There's a need of. Because as we said before, any multinational having a site in a country where there's aggregator, and they get an income, an extra income because of flexibility, of selling flexibility, the local site is saying, what about here? Because they have the same industrial processes. So for us, this is a must. We want to move ahead. We try to learn from other European countries, but it has to be slowly cooked.
Okay, before I go to you, Eric, Pep, I would like, if you want to take from here, on the role of, from the point of view of competitions, looking at capacity mechanisms, and also what you have done in the expert group. How do you see aggregation and competition, new energy services in Spain? And this is a good one.
I like this question. Well, actually, market is changing very fast. Distributed energy resources by itself cannot offer services unless they are somehow aggregated and altogether are able to participate into the electricity market, but also in ancillary services and other balancing services. So the point is, the important thing to keep is the function of aggregation. So this is what we have to guarantee that in the new legislation must be assured. And who will be the aggregator is a question that the market will decide somehow, or consumers will decide. But what is clear is that we have, and this is my point of view, we have to be open to independent aggregators. So it's not only a matter of traditional players in the energy field to keep all the business related to the aggregation of distributed energy resources, but also independent aggregators and also energy communities, people that want to be just in association, for instance, and taking part of the electricity market and providing their services and their assets to the benefit of everybody. So I think that from the competition point of view, it's very important to, first of all, release the option of aggregation of distributed energy resources. Secondly, make it in a competitive way, so it means that reduce barriers and open the market to any player that really wants to make that. So, and I think that this is next Friday. There will be, will be released a document about independent and about aggregation in general of distributed energy resources here in Barcelona. So we can afterwards maybe just inform about the schedule of that if it's of your interest. But I think that this is a very important topic and related with the committee in Madrid, what we have been working last 6 months. This independent option together with the traditional option or evolution of the traditional market player, both options are clearly writing down in the document and supported by the document. So I think that this is a very important thing to put the first step towards this new paradigm.
And for you, Enrich, that you have a lot of experience with consumers and field property, do you see that the clean energy package bring opportunities for consumers and field property to be finally end? And how would you take it?
Well, there are opportunities, certainly. Well, regulation can be used for pushing for or to break too. And in a market, there's incumbents and challengers. And the idea is that the regulation has to give opportunities to challengers, but keeping lights on. You know that phrase from the Lampedusa prince in the Italian Revolution that says in Italian, like something like this, changing everything for keeping everything the same. This is a risk, but obviously there are many opportunities for doing different things. And here the question is how the regulation, the European regulation finally ends, and well, who knows? And in the second place, how it is implemented but by member states. And every member state is a different relation of forces, of powers within it. So there are many opportunities. There are opportunities, I don't know if for finish the fuel poverty, but obviously for mitigate it a lot. But we have the risk of leaving things more or less like they are right now.
And a question to Santi, but everyone is welcome to react to each other's comments. On the sense of the consumers and the aggregators and what is coming, do you see there are going to be more consumers being more active, producing their own electricity, storing, using the electric car, and selling these services to the market? And if they do sell the electricity they generate to the market, you will have priority of dispatch, or they will compete with the utilities on the same pace? And finally, will be the aggregator role there also relevant?
Next one, an easy one, please. Huh?
Okay. Everyone is welcome to answer this one.
So, yeah. For years in the company, we have been talking about the IKEA effect.
Okay.
We say that if one day in Spain IKEA is selling PV cells, everybody will have a PV cell. Huh? Everybody will read the first pages, maybe, just for mounting it, but not the last one when you are punished if you don't do something and you will go to jail because of the PV cells. So one day, of course, everybody. But currently, most of the consumers, when you propose or you offer PV cells, most of the people says, but it is forbidden, isn't it? So as Pep has a good sentence, a lot of, but especially one. And you remember it was the Partido Popular that we had a draft of a royal decree in I think it was summer 2015, and it was terrible, something terrible. I mean, you would never ever in your life reading this install a PV cell in your house, but it was never moved from a draft. So, and he says that is worse than a bad law is a bad draft, because people is terrified. So it will take time. We still, domestic, but also companies. 2 weeks ago, I was with a company. We were talking about a charging station for e-vehicles, and I said, "Oh my God, how many square meters? 6,000 square meters, fully under the sun." And I said, "What about PV cells?" And they said, is it forbidden? No, not yet, not anymore. You can do it, there's a law, maybe not that good, but the recovery time now is 10 years, or 6 years even for some companies. So, it will take a lot of time in Spain. You know that due to the conditions for installing PV cells at this moment, the best thing you can do at your home is to avoid any export of electricity, because you export for free. So your business case is gone to hell. I mean, it's self-consumption pure. Okay, so anyone installing PV cells is not exporting. What are we going to aggregate if there's nothing left? So it will take, concerning domestic, it will take very long. But of course, we have other micro flexibilities. Heating systems, boilers, all these things, once you really use the word aggregate, so you aggregate, what you want to aggregate, 1 of 10,000 or 10,000 of 1. If you have the possibility of aggregating 10,000 of 1, then it's possible, still without PV cells, without batteries. But it will take long because of the mindsets, not because of the technology. And the last question, I am not able.
Okay.
I will give my opinion. I fully agree with Santi in that sense. We have to keep in mind that the energy sector for any customer, industrial and even more domestic, is really complex. I would say 99.9% of anyone receiving a bill from the company has no idea how to understand the bill. And I'm talking from the point of view of a person who has been dealing with big consumers, international consumers. And still now they have lots and lots of questions about the current system, how it works. We are talking about new policy in terms of sustainability. As the policies in energy are based in three big pillars: security, sustainability, and competitiveness. Right now, the industrial and the consumer is more concerned about the competitiveness because the wholesale market is expensive, the Spanish one. Regulated costs are really high, and obviously any step further, any decision related to participate in new markets, in new options, is always welcome. But the problem is, if this involves an investment, we have a problem there, because the first thing they want is, okay, before taking any sort of decision, I want to have a clear legislation, stable legislation, and that's for sure what we are not facing right now. Lots of questions, lots of doubts, lots of problems that we will face, and obviously that's a big problem right now from the customer side. Obviously, everyone is interested. Everyone wants to know how to participate and where are the benefits in those markets and in those options. Aggregation obviously sounds great, but what are the benefits? That's the first question they put on the table. And that's the situation right now. About giving priority of dispatch to to small-scale electricity producers. Well, I've got an issue here because of the experience. Any policy structure to ensure to treat fairly a small-scale production against traditional players has ending up really on a more expensive prices on the wholesale market. At the end of the day, the big players amend their participation in the market to ensure margins, despite all the facilities you give to the small-scale producers. Therefore, at the end of the day, the consumer is paying this advantage. So, in my opinion, has no sense to bring provisional solutions to short-term solutions for small scale. Aggregators have more sense than any other subsidiaries or facilities to small scale production. That's my experience. But again, we are facing lots of challenges, lots of questions, and the market is asking for security, and that's for sure what is not giving right now. Volatility, lots of questions, and investment waiting for regulation.
Do you want to say something? Afterwards, I will ask Felipe and Pep your views on energy communities and cooperatives, but if you want to take their comments and then add more on energy communities and cooperatives, please go ahead.
The last one, well, regarding the last part, in relation with a small-scale production. This is, as I said before, things are changing rapidly in the sector, and new agents are coming into the sector. Of course, small-scale producers are going to be part of the new environment of the electricity sector, and of course, the regulation should ensure that these agents are able to sell their electricity or consume their own electricity production in the same conditions as it's happened with the rest of the production. So basically, ensuring the level playing field should be the first rule in order to apply the regulation. Regarding priority of dispatch, well, basically, if we have a look into the clean energy package, or the spirit of the clean energy package, they try to set this level playing field as a major rule for all these new agents. So, of course, all those that have the right of priority of dispatch so far should be maintain, of course, in order to avoid uncertainty. But for newcomers, for new producers, these things should be avoided, except in specific cases that obviously can be justified and could be analyzed, but transitory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would like to put some numbers in order to altogether figure out exactly what we are talking about. In solar, right now Spain could have around 5 gigawatts of power installed, and the expected plan for 2030 is 47 gigawatts, so it's 10 times in 10 years or 12 years. So it means a pace of 3-4 gigawatts per year, and this is incredible. This is incredible. So the point is, how will be installed from the architecture point of view? So everything centralized, everything decentralized, everything in self-consumption, not at all, will be a mix of all of these different combinations. So the matter is how we can provide the fair rules to compete with all of these different technologies. Well, technology is the same, but configurations are different. We are talking about this 40,000 million euros investment in very few years. So we are talking about a huge business next years. And the point is that all the regions, all the cities has to capture part of this cake. It's not only a matter of location of production in the best sunny place in Spain because of the number of sun hours, whatever it is, and then we don't care about the transmission lines because somebody will put the energy from A to B and then you can consume and that's it. Transition for me is not only a matter of technology, despite this is very important and is a very clear driver. It's also a matter of changing players in the market, providing to the consumer more engagement and powerful. And this, to make this possible, is necessary to understand that we have to move very fast. Otherwise, the big business of centralized solar farms, for instance, will take almost everything. So, and I think that this is the new paradigm. So it's not a matter about renewable, yes or not. This is an old-fashioned discussion. It's a matter how we will deploy this power during the next years. And I would say that we cannot spend too much time discussing. We have to do things. We have to make the alternative also from distributed and centralized. And considering that it's not one against the other, both are necessary and both are part of the same goal that we altogether have to achieve. And I think that if we put numbers, we will realize about the magnitude of what we are talking about.
So,
yeah, following this. Yeah, it's the local for local. I mean, this is something that most of the business in the world which is outside the energy world is dealing, is the local for local, which applies also because if the nearest is the generation point to the consumption point, the less losses, the less investment in transmission lines, the less investment in grid, because it's an all way of investing for distributing electricity. Electricity should be generated. The closer from the generation point to the consumption point, the better you can calculate the needs. You don't have to make a huge power station where you don't know who is going to consume it. So, of course, at the end we will have a balance of everything. We will have nuclear, we will have solar, wind, gas. We will have a mix of everything. But the main thing is that everything must be distributed along the territory.
One last comment in that relation. One thing that concerns me the most is the fact that we, as a country, we have a really big problem of overcapacity. Our peak demand in Spain is 41,000 megawatts, and we've got a capacity of more than 115,000 megawatts. And we are talking about bringing more renewables, so more capacity, more production. So at the end of the day, we have to think about the costs of dismantling the current production. What will we do with this overcapacity? Obviously trying to interconnecting with other countries to to bring energy, it's a solution. But again, we are facing problems of what we have right now, and we are facing, okay, more generation. Okay, it's renewables, but we've got nuclear, we've got gas-fired plants, coal-fired plants, and that's a lot of money. How are we going to pay that? That's a concern for the government.
No, totally agree. This is a combination maybe of long-term price signals and capacity mechanisms, for instance. This could be part of the solution. But the point is that we have seen today that there's a mandatory target of 27% of renewable energy as in the mix of final energy consumption. This is the lowest level we could wait for, because the European Parliament talks about 35%. European Commission has not said nothing yet officially, but the Commissioner talks about maybe 30%. So this is where we are. And with all of these new renewable in the market, would say that in 2030, we could be around 60–70% of electricity provided by renewable. It means only, I would say, less than 27% of final energy used provided by renewable. So 70% in electricity market, 27%, less than 1/3, but very clear, in the total energy consumption. So yes, there is a problem how we will assure the investments to reach these goals, but we have to do that, because otherwise we will be out of the law of the mandatory goals. So this is very challenging, and this is a matter of winners and losers somehow. And maybe this public discussion about the costs of how we can achieve that, but we have to do it. So I think that this is a very important point that maybe puts the real discussion on the table. So I think that's a very important point, is the cost.
I think we are all agree, but again, the three pillars, okay, we are talking about sustainability, I fully agree with you, but competitiveness is the issue, the big issue here. At the end of the day, the bill of this transition could be huge if we do not do the things properly. And that's a big concern from the government side, from the industrial side. Again, we could break the law by not reaching the
this
goals.
is clear.
But again, what the industrial consumers want here is to be competitive against other countries. So at the end of the day, and I have no other solution, to be honest. Yeah. But this is what we are facing.
But the final costs that consumers pay are not only related with energy. It's also a lot of other costs that from policy, energy policy, from networks and others that has also very high influence. So my point is, from the energy side, as more renewables you have, lower cost it is. And scenarios shows very clear this point. So from this point of view, okay, it's in the right path. Regarding all the other costs that we are paying, maybe we have to understand that not only electricity sector has to assume all the cost of energy transition, but also other final energy usages like gas or gasoline or diesel has to assume that. So it's a global picture that we have to change, and fiscality, for instance, is very important. So a tax on the CO2 could be a very good way to pay the transition and to reduce the cost of electricity, and of course increase the cost of using your old and very contaminant car.
I think to bring a bit of the debate together where we are now, I will take the local for local from Santi. Your idea of a diesel and maybe a CO2 tax, or a tax on diesel, of all the sectors get a part of it, of the cost of energy transition. Also to talk a bit about cities, that cities are becoming more an active stakeholder into the energy transition because they have more things to say. Just to keep this conversation on what is the best solution for the energy transition, because I think we don't have time even to try to agree on something, because there are many ways to agree. I would like to ask Santi and Felipe and all of you, If we have distributed energy resources, we have aggregators that can participate in the market, better with aggregation than with priority dispatch, unless you already have it, we agree with that. But how does the network is going to cope with having more distributed energy resources when the consumer have their own electric vehicles, the batteries, the self-consumption? How does this affect the electricity infrastructure, the networks?
We need smart grid, no, very smart grids. Some of you speak Catalan or understand Catalan. A few days ago, we had a discussion about the smart. It's not everything. Everything is not smart. And if you translate to Catalan, you have intel·ligent or espavilat. So it's not clever. It's a word that we are using maybe too much. But we really need, on the general understanding, very, very smart networks. So we need power electronics distributed along the territory. But when it's local for local things, I would say, I'm not the one, I'm not engineer, I don't have to do it, I can say it's very easy. No? But when we talk about transmission lines and huge renewable wind farms and so on, this is extremely difficult, this is unpredictable, and so we need, I'm sorry, we need aggregators, no? Because not everything we can do by producing. Something apart we have to do by demand response, so managing demand. You know, years ago there was only the word demand response. Demand response it was. The energy sector, having problems, went to the consumers and said, please manage your demand, so please solve my problems. And nobody did it, of course. And now we talk about flexibility, and flexibility is that we want to work for solving all problems, the ones we produce. So, and then we need all the players in board. It's impossible to imagine a growth of the renewable generation, distributed or not, it's unpredictable anyway, without all the players, so the balanced responsible party, the aggregator, everybody must be in place, every figure must be in place, because otherwise it will never ever work.
Yeah, well, for sure, the role of the network, specifically the distribution network, is going to change dramatically because the new players, small-scale producers, large-scale producers, bidirectionality of electricity flows coming from the batteries to the network or the network to the battery, all the rest of the elements that will be in the future, and it requires a strong investment in networks, basically in three aspects. The first one has to do with digitalization. It's necessary to do the network a little bit clever, at least. And the second thing has to do with automatization of the processes in order to be able to properly manage the network. And the last thing has to do with the communication protocols that are necessary to put all the things together to be sure that you are properly managing the network. So there are not only there's not only a challenge in terms of investment in renewables for this transition, it's also a challenge in terms of investment necessities in networks. So it will be one of the, apart from the large amount of investment needed in the next decade, there's also an additional requirements of investments in terms of networks.
From your point of view, talking about competition, batteries, electric vehicles, cities, new investment on distribution lines and networks, how will the consumer at the end will be, with all this fuel poverty, be somehow tackled?
Okay. Well, we are talking about fuel poverty, energy poverty. At the end, a poor energy is someone who is unable to afford to pay energy bills, in this case from electricity. This is to be fuel poor. And well, there are individual conditions. If I have a very small income, I can afford to pay the bills even if they are very low. This is a problem that it's not possible to tackle within the electric sector. This is a social problem which have to be dealt with our taxes and with the budget, the public budget. But there are other situations when the problem is that the bill is too much high, when the cost of energy, the price of energy is too high. And then the reason is a market condition. One of the reasons is that the competition, one of the reasons can be that the competition is not enough. For instance, in our country, right now in Spain, the Agency of European Regulators on Energy says that in a range between 0, very low competition, and 9, very high competition, Spain in 2016 is just at the middle, in 4.6. Then our competition can improve a lot, until 9, eventually. So all of these things can help to improve competition. So if competition improves, it's logical to think that prices go down. So if we are able to establish, to set a legal framework, a regulation framework that leads to these income challenges entering the market, and at the same time to impulse the incumbents to change some of their activities, then we can reduce the cost of energy that consumers pay, because we have more competition. And we can see this in any good, any service that we try to buy in the market. If there's a situation of monopoly, prices go down, go up. If there's more competition, prices go down. But the question is to be able to do that with lights on, with reliable energy.
Okay, so I don't know whether there are many Q&As, so I'm going to do a kind of wrap-up of the panelists before we go to the Q&As. And I will ask each of the panelists, in your area of expertise, what do you think is the most innovative concept or technology that will go to, it will support going ahead with energy transition?
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, just the technology will ensure this all this discussion. Internet of Things is one of the things, and that would allow the information, the data flowing from TSOs, from consumers, from suppliers everywhere. And obviously the information will be the key issue. The volume of information will be managed to face the requirements of a market almost on real time. That would be the big challenge there.
I forgot in my previous talk to use the sexy word, blockchain. Yeah, we need blockchain. I mean, be happy. This is something that you understand, that you will be using, and we will only try to understand, not just... I'm able to use the word currently, so that's something already. We want to do it. It's a need, absolutely, and we talk about distributed resources and local communities and all this kind of exchange. Without blockchain, this is absolutely impossible, without smart contracts, making everything hyper-digital. And just one thing about energy poverty, because let me say, I assume that most of you are foreigners, and probably don't have the opportunity of knowing what's really happening in many families in Spain, because we have the energy poverty, and this is something that we understand as someone which is not able to pay the bill, and at the retailer we see people which is not able to pay, we delay the payment, we negotiate, blah, blah, blah. Then when there's no more possibilities, our colleagues, the big ones, the players which are on the RUNESA, they are able to offer special discounts because of social things, but there's an impressive bunch of people which is out of all this. So imagine an immigrant which is more than poor, but the contract of the apartment is not at his name. So when we, the company, we look at this consumer, we look at the owner of the apartment, which is rich. So nobody will give these people any kind of discount, any kind of nothing. And this is growing and growing. And in the past, when we knew that there were squatters somewhere, a squatter normally had or Rastafari or, now it's a family like yours, like mine, the mom, the grandma, couple, which they lost their work, and 3 kids. Normal, absolutely, which was 5 years ago, they were middle class, even upper middle class families. Currently they are squatting, and then they are beyond the fuel poverty. So, and this in some regions and in some cities, this is huge. So, and this is a social thing. I mean, it's a fake. Energy poverty, I would say, is a fake. It's the way to say, okay, there's people which is not able to pay electricity or gas. No. They are not able to buy food. They are not able to buy the books for the kids. So it's really something. And then you have the, how do you call it, the peak of the iceberg, which is the energy poverty. But it's a situation of misery affecting many, many families. And I would say, like yours and mine, I mean, people who did something wrong in the past. Sorry. I wanted to say this.
Now you can take, if you have an innovative concept or technology that you think it will help maybe fuel poverty tackling or...
Well, we can ask ourselves who is a better place for dealing in a market, a small consumer or a big one. Someone who is able to buy for 1 or for 100. And probably we will answer that the big one. So the question of what technology could help? Well, that technology that helps, that lets persons to aggregate or to grow their demand. So I'm not an engineer, I am not an expert on technology, so I can speak about technology, but if it's necessary, smart meters on one side, if it's necessary, self-production on another side, if it's necessary, some kind of communication that leads to aggregate production and aggregate demand. This is a tool that can help to fight fuel poverty, but it's easier for probably any one of us to become a prosumer that for a vulnerable customer. Any one of us could check in the web of the energy regulator if is there any offer that is more convenient for his pattern of consume. A vulnerable customer won't do that. So needs help, and the help comes from society. And on one side, are the public institutions, the public administrations, probably local communities, and when I say local communities, I am thinking public ones, in principle, can help to these people to manage better their needs. They alone won't be able to do that, even if the technology exists. Even if the technology exists, they need a managerial help. If at the end there's a problem of someone that it's not able to pay nothing, then the problem is another. Then the problem is that we need some income to these people. But when the problem is that maybe the cost is higher than it should to be in good competition conditions, then these organizations can help people in this vulnerable situation.
Talking about vulnerable consumers, and one of your colleagues, one of the students from here, he did offer a project where people that can't sell electricity to the market because there is no payment, to put it for free for vulnerable consumers. So that's an issue, a technology, how digitalization can, and the smart meters can help you to support vulnerable consumers. And for you, any
for
innovative technology?
Yeah, for me, not talking about technology, but for me, the most innovative thing of these new pieces of regulation that are coming, and also the new energy transition law that should come in the near future, is the concept of electrification. I mean, for me, it's the first time that it clearly says that electricity is the way we want to comply with the with ambitious goals that we have for 2030, 2050, and the rest of the century. So maybe electricity is not the only one that can do this, as Pep has already said, because the electrification of the society is still small. So we had to put all the things in order to provide the way or the tools that lead us to a more intensive use of electricity in cities, in industries, in transportation as well, and in all those aspects of our lives that could be introduce the electricity. So for me, that's the most innovative thing.
Yeah, I would say data. Data, I think that is the key. To be aware about the cost of energy, it's hour. You know that it's totally different. When we were talking about 47 gigawatts of solar in Spain, means that because of the peak of demand is 41, means that for several hours, all the energy in Spain will be provided by solar in 2030. This is a cost almost zero, because everything is capex almost. So if we provide the right signal to the consumers of the energy price per hour, and this could be made through data, consumer will take the advantage of that and maybe decide how to consume better and cheaper. And I think that this could be a very good trade-off between market evolution and affordability of energy. So we have to understand that it's not only a matter of energy efficiency, but also of energy of load shedding among different hours according to the cost of hour, and this cost has to be very clear to the consumer in order to decide where to invest in batteries or in demand response or in aggregation or whatever to protect and to hedge in front of this risk. So right now in Spain, the price is there is a cap in the energy market that avoid to the consumers have the real price of the energy, but despite there are some differences, hourly differences. So I think that if we are able to combine, and this is totally aligned with the clean energy package and all of these European directives, and we are able to put data in value and use data to provide services to consumers, and this is a very clear service, will be really disruptive.
So I think it's, It's time to go for the questions. So if you have any question, please raise your hands. And okay, first one. Yeah. So if you want to say your name and what your interest here today, that will help.
Hello, my name is Luisa, and I work at Sabané, Santi's company. And I would like to ask a question to Pedro and one to Enrique. To Pedro, okay, you mentioned the fact that a strong investment needs to be done on the network, on digitalization technology, automatization, and communication protocols. So I wanted to ask you, who is going to take the burden of these costs? And also considering the fact that the DSO has been stated as a regulated actor in this clean energy package, and so cannot make business out of it. So who is going to give the investment for, make the investment for this digitalization? And also, I would like to ask Enrique regarding the competition issues that you raised. And I would like to ask you, in particular, which players need more competition, and if you could quantify the margin of reduction of cost of electricity that we could achieve with an increased competition.
If you want to go first.
Well, as you perfectly know, you work with Santi, distribution is a natural monopoly. So this means that any investment has to be approved by the regulator. So this necessity that I've mentioned is not a matter of, it is obviously a desire of distribution companies, but is not on their own decision. So this has to be passed by the regulator. So the real problem is how to make the regulator understand that these investment needs are crucial for the real challenges that we have in the next decade. So it is obviously the distribution companies are obliged to present their investment plans year by year, taking into account all the different needs that they have in their plans. So, but after this, the role is in hands of the regulator. So at the end of the day, the regulator has to approve this. So the regulator will push for this kind of disruptive changes? They should do it. They should do it. If we want to see a more dynamic electricity sector, in the sense that the distributor is the neutral market facilitator. I mean, it's the ones that connect the one that is producing and the one that is consuming, and maybe changing the roles at the same time and all these things. So the network is at the forefront of the new scheme or way of working of the electricity sector. So this has to be passed by the regulator, obviously, and they need to understand this real necessity.
Sorry, we say that we have analog regulation for digital needs. Mm-hmm. So, and we also say that the clean energy package is really the step ahead for having digital regulation. But then we will have the software, the national, how do they call it, the translations, or the national transpositions. Then maybe it can keep analog, but sure. We expect them to be digital. Sorry.
Well, it's a difficult question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will talk afterwards. Well, I cannot give a percentage of reduction correlated with an increase in competition. I don't know what's the exact percentage. But if we look at the official reports of the Spanish energy regulator, the Comisión Nacional de los Mercados and Competition, National Board of Competition and Markets, the last one published in November 2017, last year, the regulator says that the decrease of the cost of primary energy as a consequence of the international market has produced a decrease in the price that consumers have paid, all the consumers. But when the regulator looks at the different kind of consumers, industry, services, and retail, and in the retail is where are the poor, then the decrease, the lower decrease is in the retail, the higher in the industry, and the second one in the services. Why? Because there's a different bargaining power. Is that a story that it's not the same to buy one unit, 100, 1,000, 1 million. So obviously, more competition leads to reduced prices. But it's necessary that every player at the end earns enough income for living. Everybody have a business for living, not just for free. So it's necessary to achieve a balance. And what sector? Well, it's difficult also, because you know probably better than me, as you are working in the sector, that for letting that when we turn on lights on, it's necessary to be produced, to be transported, to be distributed, at the end to be sold. So the price of selling my kilowatts is the price of all these different steps and the commercial margins, logical commercial margins. So, well, probably is necessary in all the areas, but we know that production is a relatively open market activity. That's to sell is a relatively, or not relatively, is a open market activity. Transportation and distribution, as has been said, right now are regulated activities. Well, they are less affected by competition, but it's possible to introduce competition in a natural monopoly, in a grid. Well, probably with digitalization and TIC, it's more possible than before, but it's not easy.
Yeah, I would just add one thing, that this is business models can change. So it's not maybe a matter of selling kilowatt hours. Maybe I provide to my consumer, my customer, kilowatt hours for free, because I'm selling also other services. When he wants a fridge, I can offer it. And this is not an extra cost for the consumer, because he has to buy a fridge. So I think that if we can imagine in markets like Germany, where you could have batteries at home, and the aggregator provides your energy for free, if you allow him to use part of your battery to provide services to the system. So the business model changed dramatically, and these consumers, they will invest a little bit in the batteries, but then they will get the energy for free. So I think that and this could be possible in a competitive market. And so I think that the competition is totally necessary to change not only technology, that this is the driver, not the mean. It's the mean, but not the final issue, but changing the business model. So, and then is when we maybe can close the loop, and we can say, okay, technology is the driver, but what is really innovative is the business models, and these disruptive business models probably will come from third parties that maybe are not in the market right now, and they will be very innovative, disruptive, and only if competition is possible, they will take part of the market. And I think that this is the potential of savings are huge.
Well, regarding competition, we shouldn't, or we have to take into account that one of the main purposes of the the new package, apart from all these things, has to do with the main purpose of the past directives that we have seen since 1996. That is the creation of a real internal energy market. So the market integration are one of the main pieces of, and one of the main changes of this new clean energy package has to do with the market integration and the creation and the fostering of short-term markets, and also, as you have said, with the imbalances and the interconnection capacity among different regions, and the creation first regions of competition, like for instance is happening in Iberia with Portugal and Spain, but in the rest of the countries as well. The promotion and integration of Europe and the creation of a whole market is the most efficient way of promoting competition. And this is one of the main purposes of the package.
There was another question there.
Testing.
Well, thank you for the whole session. My name is Jordi. I work at the Catalan Energy Cluster. It's an association with over 130 members that work, such as Esteban, that work to promote energy efficiency across different sectors. We integrate the whole value chain of the energy sector. And I'm happy to hear about blockchain and technology that is going to help us achieve the transition, energy transition. But I have a question. How are we going to be putting the consumer at the center of everything if he is not able to measure his consumption? I've got friends in the UK that at home they have a digital meter that tells them how much they are consuming in gas or electricity. Here, I have a digital so-called smart, or I think it's a bit related to what Santi said. It's smart, but it's maybe not as smart as we think it is. I don't know how much I'm spending until the bill arrives at the end of the month. And also, how are we going to promote self-consumption if we have a tax on solar energy above a certain amount of electric power installed in our homes or businesses?
Pep, I saw you want to reply to the question?
Yeah. Thank you, Alicia. No, just first question, of course, data, as I said. I would like to focus on this solar tax that you are talking about. So there is a very clear issue that somehow is also in the document we have released last Monday, that says that, okay, who is using the networks? And in the old-fashioned concept of the electricity system, of course, is the consumer. And it makes the consumer pays more than 80% of the total network, the costs of the networks. But with the option of distributed generation, I would say that centralized generators, centralized power plants, they are also users of networks. So they should also maybe pay for using that networks. At least from the logical point of view, what says is that you pay for what you use. And from a consumer point of view, if we really believe that it should be in the center of the energy, I don't care where the energy comes from. And wherever it is, if the process is really in competitive way, has to be paid according with the cost of the different potential suppliers can offer to me. So if somebody provides the energy from my roof, they will not use the network during these hours. They will use the network when the sun is not there or whatever. So it's a matter of changing the whole concept of how tariffs are structured until now. So we cannot make, I would say, small steps. We have to really change everything at the same time to change these stupid things, because right now it's something that it's totally... So, and in this way, if you as a prosumer, you do not pay the tax that are in the term of energy because you because you self-consume the energy, you don't consume this energy, so you don't pay the tax, the other consumers will pay this tax. And because the global cost is the same. So, and this is the problem, and we have really to understand that this is the problem. And my point is that prosumers has not to pay for that, but the other consumers either. So we have to understand that there are different players in the market, and there are different players that are using the networks, and producers are also to support the cost of the networks, despite they will transfer the cost of the consumers at the end of the day. And one proposal is, for instance, and this is a very clear proposal that I made the numbers, that is if you pay 1,000 euros per megawatt installed from a prosumer, from a generator point of view, you could avoid the costs related with this tax of sun of almost 2-3 gigawatts of solar, that it could represent 1,500,000 houses of 2 kilowatts each. So the matter is not, I don't want to pay that, because then everybody will pay for that. So the matter is, the cost is there, so how we all together pay for that. And this is the discussion that we do not have right now. And I think that it's very important to point it out.
And so the customer at the center of the energy system means that the customer pays all. So that's why it's in the center. So we are discussing about, debating about the energy transition, and then it's how to pay it. And I think that the cost, we are all talking about costs, and we have to first, the system should be audited. To have a fair, first, we should expect a fair cost of the energy system. Then we have private companies that we run our businesses with certain margin. This is public, so, but the core of the business of the energy system should be. And then we have to talk how to distribute it. It's simply someone will have to pay, and we have to agree on the rules for paying everything. Because otherwise, it's simply that we are. If you remember the time when how it was. The tariff was down because it was a regulated tariff, and prices went down. I think it was Rato at this time, the minister, but he forgot to say to the generators to reduce their prices. So then we have this 13,000 million euro of, how do you call it? The
Déficit de tarifa.
Déficit tarifa. Yeah, it's déficit de tarifa is a marketing name. Huh? I mean, it's not. It's something that you look at the demand side and you say, your price will go down, but you forget to look to the offer side and say you should do something. And and this is running ahead, simply running ahead, take the stone and next step without debating. And we have a lack of everything. And now you have been participating in this transition committee, but I suppose that economics of the transition, who will pay and how, is something for the next generation.
Well, actually, what the proposal was that energy term only includes the cost of energy and losses, and then the problem of self-consumption disappears. The problem is that when it will happen, not tomorrow. So what I really care about the meantime. So if it's in 4 or 5 years' time, hopefully, less than that, we will lose at least 2-3 years in this very high intensive pace of development of renewables without self-consumption. And this is the problem. So the final picture, I would say that it's quite clear how to go through, but the problem is what we cannot lose the next years, the next days, the next month because of that. So it's a matter of an agreement, because at the end of the day, it's not too much money. So it's per gigawatt could be 50, 70 millions per gigawatt of solar installed under self-consumption scheme. So in the global of 60,000 million euros per year, 50 millions is peanuts somehow. No? So it's a matter of understanding what are the priorities, what are the goals, what are the targets, and what are the path to achieve it. Yeah. And then it's easy to solve, I would say.
I have a question here. So if generator pay for the use of the grid, the solar self-consumption, still pay
Yeah,
for generating.
the proposal is that when you are a consumer, you pay depending on the voltage that you are connected. Of course, if you are connected high voltage, you pay less than if you are connected at low voltage. So the same from the generators. So if you generate and you are connected to the high voltage network, you have to pay more than if you produce your energy at home, because you only use a lower part of the network. No? So I think that yes, it's something that has to be equal footing for everybody, but according to the voltage of the connection.
Yeah, self-consumption, we fully agree that it will be a reality, and the taxes right now has no sense, as you mentioned. But at the end of the day, and I'm always back to the same thing, there's a bill there to pay, and legislators, let's say the government, just understands long-term policies for energy on a period based on 4 years. So their programs is 4 years timing scales, and that's not aligned with the long-term policies. That's the big issue, because as a snowball, the problem started in 2004 in a political decision and ended up in 2012 with a 30 billion debt, energy debt or public debt already. So at the end of the day, right now we've got this big amount of money to be paid. This tax is in order to avoid increase this debt. But understanding that has no sense, and everybody can agree that. But the problem is political there. The people that have to take the decisions is on other things right now. That's my opinion. Related to the blockchain and information to the meter reading information data, well, we are currently working on projects on blockchain, on the tokenization of the energy. And again, that's the big thing that we are tackling right now with suppliers, with some big customers, and the information, the data, the meter reading. That's one of the things that would be the solution to this problem. So projects are already there. The results will come up in the coming months. Okay, that's it.
And be careful with the information, because with Carmen, we've been in the south of England in a session of the Energy Networks Association, so the English companies. And in England, yes, they have, in UK, they have an in-house display, which is wire connected to the meter. It's mandatory, nice touch screen, and you can program, and they reported the first divorce, because someone was saying, stop the kettle, and after some days there was a divorce because it was because of the information. So we must take care of it.
There are some more questions around here.
Hi, my name is Josephine Berg. I'm a solar power analyst at IHS Markit. And you have a lot of solutions on the table, and a lot of the things that we've been discussing. But I would like to hear from going back to the Spanish energy transition, the law and the proposals, and also the proposals now for the clean energy package, of what has been proposed, or maybe some things that haven't been proposed yet. What do you see as the biggest challenges or risks? Because now whatever is being decided now, it's going to be valid for a long time ahead. So we might miss out on a lot of the opportunities that you've been talking about. So what do you see from your understanding of these proposals? What do you see as the biggest threats or challenges that should be lobbied for or pushed for to improve?
The big challenge will be political, honestly, because at the end of the day, to transpose this package to a Spanish reality, it will be face many changes, many challenges, and obviously the decisions here would be taken by a government that right now I don't know is fully understanding the impact of these changes. Again, I'm more concerned about political decisions than other.
As it was called, the winter package, so November 2016, we thought it was great. But then there's a debate and the parliament and all the lobbies pushing. And there's one lobby which is missing, is the one of the innovative customers. It doesn't exist, so they don't lobby. So you can imagine the pressure that they are suffering at this moment, everybody in the European Parliament. Now they have just started with a trialogue. If Karma wants to take the microphone, you could speak a lot of this. But at the end, we will get something. But please make your point. We will have something. But then every member state will make this. Let me tell you about the last directive about energy efficiency. It was at the beginning, it was perfect. It was something great that you could see in this directive that the 2020 goals would be reached. And then Spain and Poland, they didn't understood that energy efficiency means competitiveness and resources for the families, because you don't spend as much money in energy because you save energy. And so we saw the directive which was slowing down, and then Spain made his transposition. So the this energy efficiency directive says every company in Europe selling any kind of energy must motivate his customers to reduce 1.5% energy every year by using. Then in Spain they said, or you pay a penalty. And then they said, okay, we will make a clear list what any retailer can offer to a customer, and we will say this is equivalent to. And imagine that is, if you give 2 LED bulbs to your customer, this is equivalent to, and then you don't have to pay the penalty. So it was in 2016, I think, and the government said, while we prepare the list, you pay the penalty. So all the energy companies in Spain, we paid the penalty. It came 2017, and they said, while we prepare the list, you pay the penalty. And in 2019, we already paid. So we have something which is, not from the energy sector, as a citizen, you read this energy directive, energy efficiency directive, and you say, great, Europe is something great and is motivating. And then what you get is so fake, because there are a bunch of millions in the Fondo Nacional de Eficiencia Energética there. I know they make some publicity in TV or they pay something, but we don't see it in energy efficiency. So we are really concerned about what are we going to get real to apply in 1.5, 2 years' time. It's a pity, but it's what we have.
I think taking your proposal of asking Carmen to answer, I will do a short introduction of Carmen. Carmen is a lawyer. She works for a law practice here in Barcelona, and she's the secretariat of an association of small municipalities, small DSO, distribution companies and municipalities in Europe, and also representing them in the European Union narrative and debate. And also she's representing an association of Spanish distribution companies to the legal situation in Spain. So she knows a lot of things that are happening in Brussels right now, so she can give us an answer of what you heard here today and also on the challenge.
Thank you for this super introduction. No, just to say, as Chris very well presented at the very beginning, we are now in the trialogue phase of adoption of this so-called famous clean energy package. I have to say, well, you mentioned there are 4 directives for regulations. It's a very huge package, probably the largest, more than 1,000 pages, etc. So it's very difficult and very complex for both the Council, and the European Parliament to deal with this in such a speed, although for you maybe seems it's not, it's taking its time, is for European average that in a year almost, let's say during 2017, at least the first negotiation positions have been reached. This is a speed because politicians we mentioned, but in 2019 both the mandate of the Commission and the Parliament ends, and let's say the latest to adopt this package is December 2018. So to say, now we have the Council and the Parliament negotiation positions. That means they have looked into the Commission proposal, which normally is more ambitious than the final outcome, normally. Well, there might be some variations depending on the provisions, but in general terms, okay. And in some issues, might be they agree, but in others they disagree, the Council and the Parliament. And now, with the mediation of the Commission, they have to agree in all for the adoption, okay? So, having said that, there is always the presidency of the Council, which moves around the different member states. At the moment is Bulgaria, which is since for 6 months, from January to July, taking the presidency. Bulgaria's not, let's say, a small country, has not so many resources, so they have decided, okay, we will focus only in the negotiation of the renewables, the energy efficiency, and the governance. Okay, so what is considered the market design, which is the directive and the regulation, what we are discussing, is, well, now, yeah, already for sure going through the presidency of Austria, which is more, let's say, capable in terms of resources to handle this from July on. So we don't expect trialogue discussions before July on these 2 files. As my latest information in respect of the renewable and the energy efficiency, the negotiations are going pretty well. There is a council, energy council on the 19th, I think, of April, so there will be more news how things are going on. Maybe something for you to know, and I was thinking today, none of the topics we have discussed here, exception of the energy poverty, is a very important issue or a controversial issue in the discussions. Have not been in the previous debate, is not going to be in the trilogue. Okay, although there are maybe some differences, small differences between Parliament and Council. And in that case, well, I can share that with Santi, but even if we are representing mainly distribution issues, I have to say. And of course, we consider our lobby super important for, let's say, or within this very huge package is not so relevant. There are many other issues like capacity mechanisms, for instance, bidding zones, these regional operation centers at the level of transmission, which in a way, energy poverty or regulated prices, and these things. Why? Because, well, in a way, the decision power of the member states is there, or the national interest are more relevant there, and this is policy, this is Brussels, okay? So, so to say, so more or less, I think in these topics we are here handling. I don't expect many surprises. So to say. Another thing also, when we talk about Europe and maybe we're here, are we really changing things, yes or not? Well, there are 28 member states, well, maybe 27 soon. But, well, they are very diverse, and the speeds and the developments in the energy sector in those countries are very different. And we normally have the tendency to think from, let's say, with the western, what is happening in the western side of Europe, in those member states, also because we are more represented in all forums and so on. So experiences, we are more familiar, but there is also other countries which are in many aspects lacking behind. And this these legislations has to be implemented in all these 27 member states sooner or later. We know the first are the Scandinavians. They are very good in implementing, even Norway, which is not, are the first ones normally to implement fully all the European legislation. And then, well, if you move to the south, if you move to the east, normally it takes longer, as Santi was saying. What else I wanted to say? I think for me there are the package has three main, let's say, main pillars. Is market. It's very market oriented. It tries to, well, to remove any possible, or that's the Commission proposal, distortion to the market. Here, that's why we have priority of dispatch, all these different, let's say, feed-in tariffs or subsidies to renewables, also to abolish these regulated prices, which is very critical in certain member states, and it is linked to energy poverty. Well, this is the spirit of really creating markets. If it's a European internal energy market, this, honestly, I don't expect to see it in my professional life, but maybe we are coming closer and closer, okay, to it. The second one is, of course, or well, not to categorize them. Another one is the customer. We have put the customer in the center, and you have said a lot about it. And then also the grids, and in particular the distribution grids. The previous package was more focused on the transmission. Now it's probably the focus is more on the distribution. Why? And I think we haven't said so, because all these decentralized energy resources, they are all connected to the distribution grid. So I think, I mean, the role of the distribution grids is key in the new market design, and it will change dramatically too. It needs all the investments they have said, etc., but we will see a lot of changes. So to say, yes, we are, and I think you mentioned that, Pedro, we have to be these market facilitators, neutral, yes, because we are regulated, we should not go into business, clear, but I don't like neutral, because neutral is understood as those doing nothing normally. No, we should be active in enabling all these services, this market, okay? But if you look into the legislation, and I think it's for the first time, the legislation says everything that the distributors shall not do. Shall not do. Not what you can do, but what you shall not do. You shall not do this, you shall not do this, that, etc. So, well, that's to say. And maybe linked to you, that you say, well, now is, well, in a way, more or less done, the package, okay? Even if it's still not adopted, but many things already. And you said, but do you think it's still time to lobby, or what do you think should be changed? And I want to tell you, we did an exercise within the association and with my team in Brussels, and we wanted to draft how we see the role of the market and the role of the distributors within this market in 2035. And then young people in my team, they wrote nice papers. And then when I was reading that, I said, well, this is very nice, but you have completely forgotten what the clean energy package is telling, because many of these things will not be allowed if we take the regulatory framework now, which is now on the table to be adopted. And I say, well, but from here to 2035, it will have to be changed, because otherwise it's not going to work. So this is to say the expectations. No? If you really want to be optimistic and what you think could be achieved, could be done, all the new services, etc., with a really very open, digital and smart mind, maybe the regulatory framework is going to be adopted pretty soon. It's not going to serve for the purpose.
Pep, thank you, Carmen. Thank you very much. That was great. In terms of the challenge you see from the clean energy package?
Well, I would say that there is a political challenge that this is that have been talking about energy union, that theoretically, as for my understanding, is that all together as the Europeans share the same laws, rules, and etc. But what I see is that every state member and his national champions always try to keep the door open and try to, instead of having a real union, is a conglomerate, and every state member makes whatever they want. So I think that there is a challenging within Europe that this is where we are going all together. So we are really going to merge our energy system, or we will keep the national, I would say, not rights, but privileges or whatever it is, because you have your national champion, you have your own needs. At the end of the day, you want to keep your industry not to be really open to others. So we come back and we go back to this liberalization process that started 20 years ago or 21 years ago. So I think that there is a very clear challenging from the Commission to understand if we are really moving towards an energy union, or we are moving to a puzzle of different state members that everybody wants to make what they want. And this is, for me, part of this understandable things like Santi said, that there is a nice European energy efficiency directive, and then in the transposition is totally fake. Then I think that this is, as an European, I cannot understand that. But I see that this is not only in the energy sector, it happens also in other. So I think that the concept of Europe is also something that it's threatened within this discussion.
For you?
Well, for me, and having a look into the two things, in the European one and also the Spanish one, maybe the most relevant thing has to do with uncertainty, and uncertainty in terms of regulation. How are we going to implement this new package in Spain is a good question, but the real thing is how are we going to make it stable and predictable in the future? And that's another important thing, because the real challenge that we have in the next decade is how are we going to be able to attract all the large amount of investment in renewables that we need. So if we change the rules every 1 year or 2 years, it's going to be quite difficult to be able to attract investors to make this happen. So the way in which the things will be done is important, but it's more important for me that these things will be stable. Otherwise, it would be impossible that we will be able to get our targets.
Well, in Catalan, I think that in other languages we say something like you can do an omelette without break some eggs. And this is another way to say there is no transition without pain. All of us, someone with more difficulties, as me, we can remember the past from being teenagers to being young. For me, it's quite a long. But, well, there is no transition without pain. That is what is the Commission, or maybe better, the Parliament and the Member States dealing with. Who suffers the less? Who suffers the most? And, well, today is the first time that in a session like this, nobody until now has talked about the trilemma, the energy trilemma. Well, all of you to know that it means to have reliable energy at competitive prices. Well, for getting that, what have to prioritize? CO2 and other emissions, reduce these emissions, national champions, fuel poverty, or combat the fuel poverty. At the end is this, where we put the cards. And well, I think that as European citizens, we have the right and the duty to say where we think it's necessary to put the cards to our governments throughout our national democratic systems. Yeah, and at the end, we will see.
Are there any more questions? One and one.
I'm Jakub, a student from InnoEnergy program Select. I was wondering if there's anything in the energy package that allows for easier creation of these shared groups, of these clusters of customers or prosumers for achieving this higher bargaining power that was mentioned. Because you also mentioned about needing to do something before the bigger companies come and corner the market. Is there anything helping the smaller groups to aggregate, communities to aggregate, to create some of this bargaining power?
Yes, there was, at the beginning they call it local energy communities, but Karma, if I'm not wrong, the local is gone. Now we talk about the energy communities, which was very unclear at the beginning. They said that they wanted to promote cooperatives, but it was not in the aim of the document. And now they say that really there will be, there's the possibility of having local energy communities managing a grid, so having, and now it's clear that if they manage a grid, they will have the same obligations that any DSO, managing renewable, so it's open in under discussion. I don't know at what extent this will succeed or this will be really on the lowest level. We know that in the UK there are two situations in which customers were reporting very bad service from a DSO, and the regulator took back the network. And now there are two new DSOs, which were not existing before, managing these networks. But this is also a specific different situation because it depends on the ownership of the network. So, but it seems that the local energy that we understand also as a microgrid. So there's a new technology to be applied on real situations in certain neighborhoods under certain conditions. But if you read everything about the energy communities, it's strange when they say that within this area, a customer can decide not to belong to the energy community. This, at this moment, I don't know how to manage. When one in the middle wants to have an opt-out option. So it depends on the trialogue. We will know at the end of the year, and this is an option. But we have to see. I mean, it's too open at this moment.
I would say Iceland. I think that this is one of the main topics in Europe in energy related right now, and some islands could have this potential concept of energy community, if you want. And the other concept, very briefly, is the grid defection. So if the fixed costs of being connected into the main network are higher and higher, the business case of disconnected to the grid and create your own network could appear, and something happens in California, for instance, regarding that. So I think that the discussion is totally open, so there are a lot of different options. But of course, if there is a need from the consumer side, if they push to be proactive and not owners maybe, but at least managing his networks and so on, will be very difficult to avoid it. I think that this is the message. So at the end of the day, if we really believe in consumers in the center of the system, means that consumers will decide what to do, and technology will help them to make whatever they want. And I think that legislation cannot put doors into the field, let's say, So has to be with his ears and eyes open, and to adapt the reality of the sector to the reality of the consumers of citizens. And I think that this is a very important point.
There was one more question. There will be any more questions afterwards, because otherwise... yes. So let's take these two questions and then we end the panel. And if you have a question you really want to do, just raise your hands again.
Hi, my name is Jordi. I am working for the energy department at Lidl supermarkets. My question is addressed to Santi because he stated the concept, but any one of you could add something also. My question is, how can we not wait for the IKEA phenomenon to happen? No? What can we do to engage the customer in this aggregated electricity production that we are aiming for in this clean energy package? Thank you.
So yeah, it's very easy. Instead of having the IKEA effect, we can have the Lidl effect. I mean, this is in your hands. Huh? I mean, it's something that we are talking with some middle-sized cities, 60,000, 80,000 inhabitants, that they want to promote. What they think is that if they subsidize 100 families, this should be, one of these ice snow balls. But nobody then, this is a political wish, but then it comes legality and all the administrative procedure and subsidizing private families for doing something. It's not that easy. So it's already for 2 years almost 2 years that we are talking with some municipalities that they want to do it. I mean, it's a question of example. And if you drive in Germany, it's amazing. There's no one single roof without a PV, but someone was the first. I mean, there are subsides, of course. Currently, without subside, there's a business case, but you must be motivated and then look at the business case. But motivation is still relevant. But the example, we are working with the Abbey, Poblet Abbey. This is from 12th century, an heritage of the humanity. And they have a lot of PV cells already for many years. So we tell them, you can do the historical visit, but please don't forget to show the PV cells. So people can really see as many examples as possible. So if Lidl would have PV cells in every of the shops and make it publicity of it. So we don't know which is the trigger. We have Swedish colleagues, and imagine selling PVs in Sweden. And they said it's impossible that the only one in Sweden buying a PV cell is a retired engineer. He has the knowledge, the time, and the money. So they started with a campaign which was called Buy Your Energy to the Sun. And this, I mean, they are not rich out of selling PV cells, but at least they did something that people was motivated for having PV cells. We also expect, he will never say that, and I will never say that, energy is too cheap. The price signal is not clear enough. If there's a raise, an increase on the EV, on the electrical vehicles, and the invoice of the households really increase, people will have a clear view on the need of reducing the consumption from the grid. This can motivate people because they have already the battery at home, so motivating people to have PV. We don't know what's going to trigger, but it will happen. It has to happen. I don't know which one of them, but we're a little bit lost. I mean, I'm sorry because food is cold already. So when ICAEN, so the Catalan Energy Agency, made a subside for batteries last year, It was a subside of about 5,000 euro for a household battery, which cost is about 6,000. So the cost was 1,000 for a beautiful, fantastic battery to put in the wall of your house. Then I have, as I told you, a WhatsApp group with EV drivers. Huh? But I also have the email of 16,800 customers. So in this group of WhatsApp, where there are about 150 drivers, I said, hi, from Estabanell, we are going to support you. We will make everything for you. We have an offer. We have an agreement with Nissan for the X storage for households. And then I send the same message to 16,800 regular customers. From the 150, 14 sent me a message. From the 16,800, it was 30, sorry. So we have 44. Finally, we could only send two proposals, which came from the 14. So, and then what I noticed is that with the 14, so EV drivers, people, which is already a pioneer, that suppose that they are in the last technology, it was very easy debate. So yes, I wanted price, kilowatt hour, blah, 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 done. With the others, the question was, and what is this? And what I do with the battery? Yes, well, if you have PV cells. But so really, so if we only think in trickies or, or early adapters, there's no market. And the average freakies, any kind of, but the average customer is far away from all this. So
we're gonna take a quick, fast question, and then we are
with a long answer.
I'd like to thank all of you again for this very informative presentation. My name's Sergio. I work with the building construction company Comsa here in Barcelona. And my question is something that's sort of in the background of all of this. Many of you have talked about blockchain and data flows as a critical solution to all of this, but there's also been new data privacy regulations. So basically my question is, what sort of solutions have you found that kind of balance between the data privacy and the data flows?
Yeah, well, actually, it's having to see. It'll be short.
No. I mean, the solution is
right.
to be blind.
No, it's linked to the answer of the previous question. On those projects, there's a lot to be decided: standards, policies, everything. So some companies have decided to take the lead on that. Lidl is known as they have solar photovoltaic for many years. They've got installations and producing energy for many years. Companies are moving and trying, and as they realize that the legislation is low, the opportunities are coming from foreign countries. Our customer is multinational, so we got the feedback from many other countries. Well, we are pushed by the offices in UK, in Paris, in Finland, in order to start up innovative projects such as blockchain technology to tokenize energy. And therefore, at the end of the day, there's many questions to be answered, but well, there's a lot to be written. It's about taking the lead and start working on that, because we cannot wait. Market is moving. The countries that they are moving are taking the lead. So to be competitive, rely on that. Either we move or we're going to be removed from the market. That's a question.
So I will take that very last comment, which I think is a very good one. Is we cannot wait. Markets are moving. I will do a very short summary of words we have seen today. And full poverty, first, thank you to everyone. Full poverty is a very important issue. It's a social issue. It's an energy issue, and it have to be taken into account by politicians. The clean energy package presents opportunities, but also challenges. We are talking about consumers, but innovative consumers don't have a voice when they are discussing all the negotiations at the European Union. We have learned that aggregation is part of the future. It's good for consumers, it's good for the market, it's good for the DSOs, and it's good for all the stakeholders. So obviously it's here to stay. We have heard very good phrase like local for local, IKEA, Lidl effects. So obviously consumers do have something to say in the future of energy transition. Thank you very much.
Thank you.